stop what you're doing. Because what Webb just uncovered didn't just shake her, it shattered everything she thought she knew about her life. Multiple insiders are claiming Quad stumbled onto something that looks like a secret agreement between Kirk and Dr. Heavenly, not some filed court papers. Not some trivial rumor, but a private arrangement so explosive it could rewrite the narrative of her entire world. No official documents, no signatures confirmed, but what Quad reportedly saw was enough to make her pause, go silent, and then explode. For years, fans thought the drama on reality TV was just chaos, petty shade, and over-the-top arguments, but this felt strategic, cold, and calculated. And the moment whispers of this alleged deal reached Quad's ears, everything changed. The panic wasn't performative, it was personal. Because if even part of what's being claimed is real, then what she walked into wasn't just betrayal, it was business. And that's when Quad finally spoke. Not with tears, not with apologies, but with fire. Allegations, receipts, and shifting stories that refuse to stay buried. The kind of revelations that turn late-night rumors into a full-blown implosion. What you're about to hear is Quad breaking her silence, and trust me, the details get darker from here. Are you ready to see everything you thought you knew unravel? Stop everything, because what Webb reportedly discovered didn't just shake her, it completely dismantled the reality she had built around her life. Sources close to her claim she stumbled upon what insiders are calling a secret operational agreement between Kirk and Dr. Heavenly. Not a court filing, not a signed document, just whispers of a clandestine arrangement so shocking, so carefully constructed that it allegedly rewrote everything she thought she knew about her marriage and her public persona. And let's be clear, what Quad allegedly saw wasn't trivial. It wasn't drama cooked up for the cameras. According to multiple anonymous sources, it was methodical, strategic, and personal. People who claim to have seen her reaction say Quad didn't just get upset, she went silent. She froze. And then, when the right moment came, she exploded in a way that stunned everyone around her. For years, viewers and fans assumed the fights, the shade, and the seemingly petty arguments were nothing more than television chaos. But according to these reports, Quad's discovery turned that notion on its head. This wasn't chaos. It wasn't improvisation. It was a blueprint. It was betrayal calculated to perfection. Some of her closest friends reportedly described it like this: Quad didn't just cry. She analyzed. She recalibrated. She saw the threads of control in her life unraveling and realized she had to respond strategically, and respond she did. Not with tears, not with small confessions, but with fire. Allegations, receipts, and contradictions that refused to stay buried surfaced immediately after. According to insiders, what triggered the chain reaction was a series of messages and interactions that seemed innocent on the surface but were laced with implications. These weren't just private chats, they were breadcrumbs showing coordination, alignment, and access that should have never existed. And when Quad finally broke her silence, she wasn't just defending herself emotionally. She was dismantling the story others had been trying to sell for months. Now, let's set the stage. Kirk, long known for his calm public demeanor, suddenly looked different. Observers say his posture, his facial expressions, even his tone of voice subtly shifted once the whispers began circulating. Dr. Heavenly, meanwhile, maintained her confident, polished exterior. But fans who study body language closely noticed pauses, delayed reactions, and what some are calling strategic composure, a kind of calm that isn't comfort but calculation. Meanwhile, Quad's response was striking because it was measured yet raw. She didn't shout. She didn't storm off. She simply revealed enough to make viewers question everything they had seen in the past. And make no mistake, what people witnessed wasn't just a confrontation. It was a public decoding of behavior, a dismantling of narrative, and a subtle exposure of what may have been orchestrated behind the cameras. Multiple sources claim that this alleged secret agreement was tied not to love or betrayal in the traditional sense, but to power, influence, and control. Insider accounts suggest it involved financial positioning, social maneuvering, and decisions designed to manipulate perception. If even part of what is being reported is true, Quad's discovery could mean she was never just a participant in her own life story. She may have been unknowingly navigating a Puritan script controlled by Kirk and Dr. Heavenly. And the implications are massive. For years, the public had been sold a version of reality in which Quad's reactions, her struggles, and her relationships were portrayed as authentic, raw, and reactive. But now, if these reports are accurate, what appeared as genuine emotion might have been responses to a structure that was already in place. A framework she wasn't fully aware of. Fans immediately noticed changes after certain episodes aired. Observers point to a shift in Quad's energy, which some describe as quiet recalibration, unlike the dramatic expressions, tears, and confrontations typically associated with reality TV collapse. Quad reportedly became more withdrawn, more strategic, more deliberate in her interactions. The insiders say this wasn't weakness, it was analysis. She was processing, studying, and preparing for a response that would be calculated rather than reactive. And the more viewers examined past episodes, the more inconsistencies began to appear. Scenes that once felt spontaneous now seemed structured. Conversations that looked candid now appear rehearsed. And the internet, as it always does, began connecting dots that producers never intended fans to notice, according to anonymous sources familiar with behind-the-scenes production chatter. This alleged secret agreement created tension that extended far beyond Quad's personal space. Invitations to events changed unexpectedly. Collaborative projects shifted. Professional relationships cooled. Support systems she had relied on reportedly began disappearing just as the rumors circulated. And the timing? Almost surgical. Fans and insiders alike noted that Quad's demeanor began shifting before the public had even heard a whisper of the alleged deal. In other words, the collapse didn't begin online, it began privately. Quad knew first, and the universe only caught up later. Public commentary exploded. People began analyzing her every word, every pause, every subtle glance. Why didn't she respond sooner? Asked one fan forum. Why are Kirk and Dr. Heavenly acting so composed? Wondered another. And then came the slow realization. This wasn't just reality TV drama. It was a meticulously orchestrated series of events moving through personal relationships, professional alliances, and public perception. If you were following her story closely, you'd see patterns emerge. Quad's interactions with former allies became distant, her public responses carefully measured. Kirk's facial expressions and interactions with other cast members grew more calculated. More precise, Dr. Heavenly maintained her confident exterior, but fans noted moments of hesitation, micro-pauses, subtle cues that hinted at awareness of exposure. And yet, nothing official surfaced. No signed document. No court filing. Just behavioral proof, timing, and whispers that refuse to die. This is where the story turns darker. Allegedly, the agreement wasn't just about perception, it involved access, positioning, and influence. Sources claim that certain decisions, appearances, and even collaborations were designed to elevate or suppress individuals strategically. Insider accounts hint at lavish spending, selective opportunities, and preferential treatment that created a power imbalance, leaving Quad in a position where she wasn't just emotionally vulnerable, she was operationally vulnerable. And when the whispers reached her, she realized that the narrative she had been living might have been structured to control her, limit her, and manipulate public perception for someone else's gain. The online response was immediate and fierce. Fans dissected every interview, every social media post, every subtle interaction. "Look at the body language here," said one commenter. "Notice how Kirk avoids eye contact," said another. Observers began rewatching episodes, cataloging interactions, and mapping timelines, trying to find proof of coordination. And what they found wasn't proof in the traditional sense. It was pattern, repetition, alignment, and moments that suddenly took on new meaning. The late-night meetups, the sudden reconciliations, the inconsistencies in statements, they weren't coincidences anymore. They were threads connecting a narrative that fans began to suspect was being managed from behind the scenes. Quad, according to insiders, reacted with a combination of shock and strategy. She reportedly did not lash out publicly at first. She went silent. And silence, as anyone who studies media manipulation will tell you, is rarely neutral. It's observation, calculation, and a way to gather information before striking. Friends and former collaborators noticed the change immediately. She stopped defending herself emotionally. She stopped over-explaining. She began simply documenting interactions, analyzing behavior, and preparing for a response that would expose the pattern without giving away her own hand. And the irony? Her measured silence only amplified suspicion. People noticed. They theorized. They speculated. And that speculation fueled the fire further, creating a feedback loop where public curiosity and private tension collided. Then came the confrontations that changed the game. Scenes aired in which Quad addressed certain comments made by Dr. Heavenly. Clips that seemed minor or isolated suddenly had context. Observers pointed out that what viewers initially saw was not the genesis of claims or allegations, it was the reaction, the counter, the strategic dismantling of a narrative. When you see her respond, pay attention. One insider said, "She isn't emotional. She is surgical, and in this calculated approach." Quad revealed more than she intended, showing that the whispers of a structured agreement, the private understanding between Kirk and Dr. Heavenly, were not just rumors. They had real consequences, shaping behavior, public perception, and personal relationships in ways that were previously invisible to the audience. It is at this juncture that patterns begin to emerge clearly. Fans and industry watchers noticed that invitations dried up, social media interactions became sparse, and professional collaborations shifted. Support systems that had once been reliable disappeared just as rumors began to circulate. This wasn't happenstance, it was pattern. And pattern, in this context, tells a story louder than any document ever could. According to insiders, the arrangement allegedly observed by Quad may not have been written, but its effects were tangible. Decisions, interactions, and behavior shifts all pointed to coordination, alignment, and strategic positioning. The public may never see an official agreement, but the signs were everywhere for those paying attention. By now, Webb's reaction had become the focal point. Fans weren't just interested in the alleged secret arrangement, they were studying her. How did she respond? When did she speak? When did she stop speaking? And most importantly, how did she navigate the collision of personal betrayal and operational control? Observers noted that her silence was intentional. Her pauses, her measured responses, her strategic disengagement all indicated a woman recalibrating after discovering that the foundation of her relationships, both personal and public, might have been manipulated behind her back, and that's where the story leaves us at this moment. Webb didn't collapse in tears. She didn't throw public tantrums. She observed. She analyzed. She measured. And while the public waited for drama, she quietly gathered evidence, documented inconsistencies, and prepared to respond with precision. The whispers of the secret agreement between Kirk King and Dr. Heavenly weren't just gossip, they were a lens through which everything Quad had experienced suddenly made sense. And fans, they were left piecing together the puzzle, rewatching episodes, connecting behaviors, and realizing that the reality they had been watching might have been structured long before the cameras ever rolled. And that's when the narrative deepened. Once Webb's silence ended, her response wasn't measured in words, it was measured in impact. Sources claim she didn't just expose inconsistencies. She revealed patterns of behavior that suggested Kirk King and Dr. Heavenly weren't acting impulsively, they were executing a coordinated plan. According to insiders, certain encounters that once seemed casual, even benign, suddenly appeared deliberate. Timing, placement, and proximity weren't accidents. They were strategy. And fans online noticed immediately. People began dissecting every scene, every shared glance, every interaction that had aired over the past seasons. Look at how Quad reacts when Dr. Heavenly enters the room, one online commenter noted. Notice Kirk's body language when they're all together. It's not normal. Something is off indeed, according to anonymous sources who claim to have had direct insight into behind-the-scenes interactions. The alleged agreement went far beyond casual arrangements. It wasn't about friendship. It wasn't about alliance, it was about positioning. It's like watching chess pieces move without anyone realizing they're in play, said one former crew member who spoke on condition of anonymity. Every opportunity, every event, every conversation, it's designed to manipulate perception. Quad wasn't just a participant. She was a target of orchestration, and when that orchestration became visible, the consequences were immediate. Invitations she would normally receive went missing. Collaborations shifted in ways that didn't make sense. Support systems she had relied on for years reportedly started disappearing, and all of it coincided with the surfacing of whispers about the secret operational agreement. Fans weren't just speculating, they were hunting for behavioral proof. People noticed subtle shifts in tone and timing. Clips that once seemed spontaneous now felt staged. Responses that had been framed as casual now looked rehearsed. Social media analysts and fan investigators even began mapping Quad's public appearances against Dr. Heavenly and Kirk's interactions. Patterns emerged: sudden travel overlaps, delayed social media posts, curated public engagements. And those patterns weren't small. They were meticulous. The public doesn't see it, but the moves are deliberate, said one online blogger who claims to have insider knowledge. It's not about heartache. It's about access, influence, and control. Meanwhile, Quad reportedly started collecting evidence. Screenshots, timestamps, and documented interactions became her arsenal. Friends who have spoken to her say she wasn't emotional. She was calculating. She wanted context, verification, and clarity before making any public moves. And the more she observed, the more apparent it became. The structure she had stumbled into wasn't chaotic. It was systemic. And that's what made the discovery so devastating. She didn't just uncover lies. She uncovered operational control decisions made to manipulate public perception, professional opportunities, and personal loyalty, all while keeping her in the dark. Then came the public reaction. Viewers who had long dismissed conflicts as reality TV embellishments suddenly had reason to reconsider. Fan forums exploded with commentary, theory threads, and timestamp breakdowns. Why does Kirk act so composed? Asked one thread. Why is Dr. Heavenly always perfectly timed? Mused another. Analysts dissected Quad's pauses, her glances, her words, all for subtle cues that might confirm what insiders claimed. The scrutiny wasn't idle curiosity, it was investigation. And what they discovered fueled more questions than answers. Episodes previously dismissed as chaotic drama now looked like rehearsed encounters designed to test Quad, control her reactions, and manipulate the narrative, according to multiple sources. Quad's silence and subsequent strategic moves sent ripples through her social and professional circles. Friends, allies, and collaborators noticed the change immediately. She stopped over-explaining. She stopped justifying her actions. She began observing and documenting. And when she finally addressed the public, she wasn't seeking sympathy. She was revealing patterns, inconsistencies, and strategic manipulations. It wasn't about being dramatic, one insider reportedly said. It was about exposing a framework, and that framework allegedly linked directly to Kirk King and Dr. Heavenly. Social media analysis quickly picked up on subtle financial and operational patterns that seemed connected to the alleged secret agreement. Fans noticed expensive, selective trips, sudden appearances at events, and professional projects that disproportionately benefited one party. Observers speculated about behind-the-scenes coordination, favoritism, and deliberate exclusion. It's like watching a slow-motion collapse, commented one fan analyst. You don't see a sudden explosion. You see isolation, displacement, and strategic distance building over time. That's how operational betrayal works, and the more the public analyzed, the more the discrepancies became undeniable. Quad's public image of being reactive and emotional was now reframed as observant and calculating. Meanwhile, Kirk and Dr. Heavenly's interactions became a point of focus. Observers noticed subtleties in their communication, a glance here, a pause there, small gestures that seemed harmless but, when connected to the alleged agreement, appeared strategic. The public may never see the alleged operational deal on paper, but behavior, timing, and subtle coordination were enough for fans to speculate. The whispers of manipulation weren't just idle gossip, they were patterns of power, control, and influence that Quad had allegedly discovered before the public ever did. Industry insiders reportedly explained that private arrangements like this don't always require documentation. Sometimes they exist in behavioral contracts, implied roles, expectations, and strategic decisions that control perception, access, and influence without ever touching paper. According to sources, Quad's alleged discovery highlighted exactly that how operational agreements, even without documentation, can shape personal and professional outcomes. And when the audience saw Quad's reactions, they began to realize something they had never considered. The show they had been watching for years might have been meticulously structured, and the chaos they had enjoyed might have been controlled, orchestrated, and planned. Online forums and commentary boards exploded with speculation. Fans began cataloging public appearances, measuring pauses, and analyzing interviews. Subtle shifts in Quad's demeanor, her carefully measured words, and her selective engagement all pointed to something beyond typical reality TV drama. Insiders claimed that the alleged secret agreement involved not just emotional manipulation, but operational control decisions about what Quad could or couldn't access, who would support her publicly, and which interactions were allowed to occur. The deeper fans dug, the more they uncovered layers of strategy, timing, and influence that had previously gone unnoticed, and while the public dissected behavior, Quad reportedly moved quietly, protecting herself and her reputation. She didn't respond to every rumor or question. She didn't issue statements or clarifications. She observed, and observation, in this case, was power. Her silence amplified speculation, which forced Kirk and Dr. Heavenly into defensive behaviors. Allegedly, this quiet recalibration shifted the balance. Those who had thought they controlled the narrative suddenly found it slipping out of their hands. And the public? They were watching, analyzing, theorizing, and waiting for the next move. Alleged witnesses describe Quad's approach as surgical. She didn't react emotionally, she repositioned. She didn't confront blindly, she documented. She didn't collapse, she reorganized. And that distinction matters because in reality TV, timing and perception are everything. Insiders claim that when whispers of the secret agreement leaked, what seemed like chaos on camera was actually a carefully staged observation of reactions, Quad's included. And while the viewers were seeing fragments, Quad was reportedly seeing the full pattern, the structure, and the orchestrated choreography that had been guiding her public image for months, if not years. At this point, observers noticed another chilling pattern. Social support around Quad began to shift, seemingly in tandem with her discovery. Former collaborators and friends grew distant. Invitations disappeared. Public endorsements vanished. And while some attributed it to drama or jealousy, insiders claimed the timing and coordination suggested strategic alignment with the alleged secret agreement. The question became unavoidable: how much of what we see is personal betrayal, and how much is structural manipulation? And more importantly, if Quad Webb had uncovered this before the public, what was being protected and who truly held the cards? The alleged operational agreement had consequences far beyond Quad's personal experience. Fans began tracking shifts in Kirk King's behavior, Dr. Heavenly's interviews, and even public appearances that had previously seemed routine. All of it began to look orchestrated. Observers noted delayed reactions, measured responses, and subtle cues of awareness, like performers carefully playing parts in a play where the audience only sees snippets. And when Quad finally spoke, it wasn't just emotional, it was analytical. She wasn't tearing down anyone emotionally. She was exposing behavioral evidence, patterns, and strategic manipulations that pointed toward a deeper orchestration than anyone had imagined. By the time public attention peaked, the alleged secret agreement wasn't just a rumor, it had become a study in perception, control, and influence. Fans weren't just watching a reality TV feud anymore. They were watching a potential operational collapse, a strategic dismantling of relationships, and a public decoding of behavior that had been meticulously controlled behind the cameras. And while no signed document ever appeared, the alignment of timing, behavior, and strategic interactions suggested an underlying structure that left viewers questioning everything they had believed about Quad, Kirk, and Dr. Heavenly. And that brings us to the cliffhanger. Quad Webb didn't react like a typical reality TV star. She didn't cry, scream, or lash out. She repositioned, analyzed, and documented. And in doing so, she inadvertently turned a narrative once controlled by Kirk King and Dr. Heavenly into a story of public investigation, behavioral analysis, and speculation that refuses to die. Fans aren't waiting for entertainment, they're waiting for clarity, explanation, and exposure. And insiders hint that what comes next could redefine relationships, reputations, and alliances for everyone involved. Quad Webb's discoveries and subtle exposures circulated online. The environment around Kirk King and Dr. Heavenly reportedly shifted dramatically. Insiders say what was once carefully managed chaos turned into tense orchestration. Decisions that had once seemed minor suddenly took on weight: who attended events, who appeared on social media, and which collaborations went forward. Allegedly, every move became strategic, and Quad? She wasn't reacting, she was recalibrating, calculating, and quietly documenting every detail. Fans watching from the outside could sense the tension, even if they didn't yet understand the framework. According to multiple anonymous sources, the alleged operational agreement that Quad stumbled upon wasn't limited to emotional manipulation. It allegedly included influence over professional opportunities, strategic public appearances, and selective access to resources. It's not personal, it's structural, one insider reportedly said. Quad didn't just uncover lies. She uncovered a system designed to control perception, access, and loyalty. And once the public saw fragments of Quad's reaction, social media went into overdrive. Clips of her pauses, her careful words, and her strategic silences were dissected, time-stamped, and analyzed as evidence of something much deeper. Observers noted subtle but meaningful changes in Kirk and Dr. Heavenly's public personas. Formerly casual smiles, unguarded gestures, and spontaneous remarks gave way to measured appearances, carefully curated interviews, and conspicuously delayed responses. Every word, every pause, every public engagement suddenly seemed orchestrated. And while viewers debated whether this was guilt, preparation, or pure strategy, insiders claimed the truth was even more calculated: containment. The alleged agreement wasn't just about hiding behavior, it was about shaping perception while minimizing risk. And in the court of public opinion, perception often carries more weight than facts. Meanwhile, Quad Webb reportedly continued to document everything she could. Private messages, social media interactions, and timestamps became her arsenal, creating a narrative that didn't rely on speculation, but on observable patterns. Friends close to Quad describe her as methodical, careful, and deliberate, qualities that only heightened the sense of intrigue. She wasn't breaking down, one source said. She was building a case without a courtroom. She was showing the world that actions speak louder than statements, and the public quickly caught on. Once attention shifted from casual drama to analysis, every appearance, every word, and every reaction became scrutinized. Magnifying the alleged fallout of the secret agreement, the alleged consequences reportedly extended beyond personal relationships. Professional opportunities, endorsements, and collaborations reportedly shifted in response to the emerging narrative. Fans noted that events once considered casual now seemed carefully managed. Invitations that had been routine suddenly disappeared. Alliances that had once been predictable became uncertain. And while insiders could only speculate about the motivations, the timing suggested alignment with the alleged operational agreement and arrangement designed to subtly shift influence, control access, and maintain perception. Public reactions were mixed but intense. Some viewers expressed outrage on social media, questioning why such manipulation could occur behind the cameras. Others speculated about the ethical implications, wondering how much of reality TV is orchestrated beyond the audience's view. "This isn't just drama," commented one fan analyst. "This is a blueprint for control. If these whispers are true, it's systemic." Webb isn't just reacting, she's exposing the structure itself, and that exposure sparked wider discussions across forums, podcasts, and gossip blogs. Allegedly, producers, insiders, and former crew members weighed in privately, some hinting at ethical breaches, strategic manipulation, and deliberate concealment of key information from both Quad and the audience. One of the more chilling elements, according to sources, was how quickly the alleged secret agreement reshaped public perception. Where once Quad had been portrayed as reactive or emotional, her careful observation and measured public responses reframed her as perceptive and analytical. Kirk and Dr. Heavenly, meanwhile, faced intensified scrutiny. Every gesture, every comment, and every interview was now evaluated for signs of orchestration, manipulation, or concealment. The alleged agreement may have been intended to control perception, but once exposed, perception controlled them. Insiders claimed that the tension wasn't just professional or public, it was personal. Quad reportedly felt a profound sense of betrayal. But what made it worse, according to those close to her, was the realization that the betrayal was structured. It wasn't chaotic. It wasn't impulsive. It was systematic, calculated, and designed to achieve a specific outcome, influence, control, and advantage. And when the public pieced together her reactions, the strategic pauses, the measured words, and the calculated silences, it became clear that Quad was operating on a different level. She wasn't collapsing, she was documenting, analyzing, and waiting for the right moment to reveal the truth. As the weeks progressed, the ripple effects reportedly extended even further. Online communities began to track appearances, interactions, and subtle shifts in behavior. They mapped event overlaps, professional engagements, and social media posts. Patterns emerged: strategic timing, selective collaborations, and managed visibility. What had once seemed spontaneous now appeared intentional. And when fans began connecting the dots, the alleged operational agreement became less about speculation and more about observable patterns of behavior. Public and private responses reportedly diverged. Kirk and Dr. Heavenly, according to insiders, increased their controlled communications, carefully scripting. Interviews and appearances. Statements were curated, social media was managed, and interactions were selectively edited for public consumption. Meanwhile, Quad maintained silence in public, focusing on observation and documentation rather than reaction. She wasn't ignoring it, one source said. She was preparing. Preparation looks like silence, but it's anything but passive, and that approach only heightened curiosity, speculation, and public attention. The alleged fallout also reportedly included shifts in alliances and support networks. Friends and collaborators who had once been visibly supportive reportedly grew quiet. Professional support evaporated in ways that seemed coordinated. And as the pattern unfolded, fans began to realize that what they had been observing wasn't mere reality TV drama, it was a study in operational collapse, influence, and strategic manipulation. The alleged agreement had not only affected Quad personally, but had ripple effects across her professional and social environment, creating fractures that appeared carefully designed. Meanwhile, commentators and analysts began framing the situation as a case study in perception, control, and narrative management. Reality TV ethics, loyalty, and strategic influence became hot topics. Social media threads exploded with discussions about operational behavior, emotional manipulation, and strategic silences. And while no official documents ever surfaced, behavior patterns documented interactions, and timing created a narrative that some argued was even more damning than written proof. As the alleged fallout continued, Quad reportedly made careful public appearances that reinforced her new narrative: observant, analytical, and strategically aware. Every word, every pause, every glance became a signal to the public and a warning to those who may have believed they could manipulate her or the perception of her audience. Insiders describe her approach as methodical, calculated, and precise, a public demonstration that while the alleged operational agreement may have existed, it no longer controlled her. The long-term consequences, according to sources, may still be unfolding. The alleged agreement, if real, reshaped relationships, alliances, and public perception. It exposed vulnerabilities in trust, loyalty, and transparency. And while fans and analysts continue to piece together patterns, one thing is certain: Webb's measured response transformed her from a reactive participant into a strategic observer, challenging the orchestrated structures that may have controlled the narrative for years. And as the public waits for clarity, speculation, or confession, one principle becomes clear: silence, observation, and strategy can be more powerful than immediate reaction. Webb reportedly didn't just survive the alleged agreement, she navigated it, documented it, and used it to expose patterns that would otherwise have remained hidden. And while the final consequences remain uncertain, what cannot be denied is the ripple effect. Alliances have shifted, reputations have been questioned, and the public is now watching every move, every word, and every pause with renewed scrutiny. In conclusion, the fallout from what Webb allegedly discovered goes far beyond drama, gossip, or personal conflict. It touches on strategy, influence, operational manipulation, and perception control. It exposes how power, access, and loyalty can be structured, hidden, and orchestrated. And most importantly, it demonstrates that awareness, calculation, and strategic observation can disrupt even the most carefully managed narratives. The alleged agreement may never appear on paper, but its impact through behavior, timing, and calculated actions is undeniable. Fans continue to speculate. Did the agreement truly exist? Were the patterns intentional or coincidence? And what will happen next in the shifting dynamics between Webb, Kirk, and Dr. Heavenly? The answers remain elusive. What's clear is that the audience is no longer passive. They're investigators, analysts, and observers, decoding every gesture, word, and pause. And as the story unfolds, one lesson becomes evident in the world of reality television. Operational betrayal is far more dangerous than emotional drama, and the public is watching, waiting, and decoding every move. And that's the moment when the story stops being entertainment and starts becoming a lesson in strategy, influence, and human behavior. Webb didn't just react, she recalibrated. She didn't just survive, she exposed. And while the fallout continues, the public remains captivated, analyzing every interaction, every appearance, and every subtle shift in behavior. What comes next may rewrite alliances, reputations, and the rules of engagement in ways the audience hasn't yet imagined. But one thing is certain: the story isn't over. The agreement may never be confirmed, and every move from this point forward will be watched under a microscope. Now, here's where it gets real, and you need to pay attention. Because what Webb uncovered isn't just a story, it's a map of secrets, influence, and power moves happening right under our noses. The question isn't whether this is drama or truth. The question is, who controls the narrative, who benefits, and who's been quietly rewriting the rules behind the cameras. And while the official statements remain silent, every glance, every pause, every subtle shift is speaking volumes. So, I want you to think. Do you believe this was just messy reality TV? Or is there something deeper, something more calculated, lurking behind Kirk and Dr. Heavenly's polished appearances? Your opinions matter here. Drop them in the comments, debate, Share what you think is happening in real-time. And don't just scroll past. Hit that like button to support deep dives like this, and make sure you subscribe with notifications on. Because this story isn't going to unfold on a schedule. It's happening in leaks, slips, and moves that nobody wants you to see. Stay here, stay vigilant, and watch as the silence cracks, the patterns reveal themselves, and the fallout continues. This isn't entertainment, it's an investigation you can't afford to miss. You can't afford to miss.